here on the big screen. I'm going to situate you so you can see some of the kids that we're going to be talking to. And then we're going to take questions from the audience as well. So I'll turn you around when we get to that point if possible.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So lots of things going on in Oregon. Lots of things going on with youth, climate recovery advocates in Oregon. We had a big week last week in the city of Portland. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about the youth participation at the hearing last week?
So I work for a nonprofit called Our Children's Trust. I just started recently. I'm a local climate law fellow, and our job is to give youth the tools so that they can advocate the best possible on climate-related issues. And so what we've done in the past is that we've filed a lot of lawsuits. You may have seen the news. We finally had our case heard in Oregon last week, and so we're waiting to see if the state of Oregon is going to call the atmosphere a public trust resource that it has a duty to protect. And so that's what we did for about our first 4 years, and then we kind of transitioned. We've started to do some more grassroots type organizing, and you may have also heard the news last year. Eugene became the first city to pass what's called a climate recovery ordinance, which binds its public policy to reducing its share of carbon emissions to 350 parts per million by the end of the century. And so it's a huge move forward. So my job has basically been to move all over the region and try to find youth that are already active on this issue and to just give them the tools to kind of push it a step further. What Don's referring to in Portland, for y'all who are natives right now, you may not know this, but our entire region up through BC, and even some of the films touched on it a little bit, down through Oregon is becoming a huge fossil fuel export region. And in Portland, there are plans to put in a really giant propane export terminal, which would bring propane from Alberta, Canada, that's fracked, natural gas that's fracked and then turned into propane, brought through rail and also through pipeline, put in a terminal at the Port of Portland to put it on ships to take it overseas. And so we've had a public process for this, and youth turned out and pretty much stole the show at the Planning and Sustainability Commission's vote on the issue. Was anybody there for that, by the way? But Jan has been working with youth. They were all Sunnyside youth, and so I thought she might just say a word about what Sunnyside does and how active their youth are as well.
Sure. I was fortunate to work with some educators about 20 years ago to start the environmental middle school, and now it's Sunnyside Environmental School. And the whole point was to connect kids with the natural environment so that they would love it and care about it. And part of that it just went hand in hand with service learning. So we're a big service learning school, so we just try to provide ways and encourage kids to get into the community and do action to get connected and have their voices heard about issues that they care about. So for the students that spoke, they are on the climate change cohort, 8th grade cohort, and they chose to be on that because that's an issue they cared about. So we were fortunate to have Nick and some other folks come in and talk to them, folks from Audubon and Columbia River Keepers, and then they just studied and educated themselves and decided that they wanted to, with a little push of adults and support, to testify at the hearing. So kids do a lot of, students do a lot of activism and work in the community at the school. And here's some of them here, so they can talk.
Okay, this is for the youth on the panel. Why do you guys get it, but people older than you don't get the climate thing, do you think? Why does it resonate for you guys in a way that you never hear really a lot of the mainstream adults talking about it?
Well, I think, I know like a lot of the older people, like climate change wasn't a huge issue when they were younger, but for us it's kind of just been this thing that's been around our whole lives that we've been told, and kind of everyone has like values that they learn when they're younger, and one of the values we've learned is that climate change is something that's happening.
And I also feel like for the older generations, it's something we're going to have to deal with for the rest of our lives, which is pretty much the majority of it. Like, we aren't very far and we have a very long time to live, and so this is what we're going to have to be dealing with. And for them, it's not going to be that big of a deal for them, because it's not going to make that much of a difference to them. And so it's kind of just like, oh, the youth can deal with it. It's their big issue.
Well, I think that everybody has some thought that climate change is real, but they don't really want to be concerned about it or want to worry about it, or they just are scared and they don't want to like show it, and so they try to act like it's not a big deal, but like everybody I think knows it's real. It's just they're not taking action, but then some people are taking action, and I think everybody should.
Pass that mic, yeah, thanks.
Hey, I'm Xavier, by the way. How I see it, the reason why a lot of the mainstream adults is, as she said, pardon me, what's your name?
Dawn.
Dawn, as Dawn said, is, well, from my personal experience, is that it wasn't their issue when they were growing up. My grandma, whenever I see her, she's always talking about how she grew up in the Depression, and that was her main focus of her family in life. That if you don't have money, then you don't have power. And people of that generation are so focused on keeping and maintaining their power, and if you don't have money, then you don't have power. So they were all focused on their economic growth, not on the limited resources that they had on the planet Earth. So that's the issue that they always focused on, was making sure that you didn't run out of money, which is why no one in that generation wants to talk about us running out of what gives us our money, our resources. It's just not what they grew up around. What we're growing up around is this issue of global climate change, kind of like how they grew up with the issue of no money and no economic stability. So it's just kind of depends on what you have to deal with as you're coming up, and they didn't have to deal with that, so they don't talk about it. I'm sure that all of us sitting here, when we're 50, 60, 70, we won't talk about like how much we need or want money. We'll talk about how much we need to preserve the earth.
Was there a moment, can any of you speak to, there was a moment, because there's a lot of things you can care about, right? Like, so, and bison is a really good one to care about. I actually want to know what climate change means for bison, so Eddie will ask you that question in a second. But what was the moment for you all to just decide that you wanted to actually commit to, being a spokesperson in some way for raising awareness on this issue?
I feel like I've always had very strong opinions and always felt like I needed to share them with people and get them to understand. And so when I came to Sunnyside in 6th grade and I started learning more about climate change and how big of an issue it was and how something needed to be done about it, I felt like I really needed to help people understand that and tell them about it and help spread the information, because if nobody knows about it, then nobody knows the facts and nothing can ever get done.
Well, I've been going to Sunnyside since I was 5, so I had things put into me. We made like books about like pollinators and like gave them out around the neighborhood. Like ever since I was like this high, I've been learning about like how to help our earth. And I think in 6th grade, it's when you really start doing the service learning part of it. And you see the older kids in our school doing a lot of activism. And remember, like halfway through my 6th grade year, and I talked to like some of my friends who didn't go to my school about the topics, and they didn't know what I was talking about. I felt so smart because I knew way more than they did about like big events, and I could like talk to adults and have adult conversations. And I think that was just a really cool experience for me to realize like that you don't have to wait to have adult conversations. You can just have them now.
So it started with my parents. My mom took us up to Vancouver, Washington, and we met Bill McKibben, the person who founded 350.org, and we were listening to his presentation and about his books, and I was kind of confused because I didn't know much about climate change, just the basics, like the polar ice caps are melting, and Bill McKibben really sparked a light in me, and he really drove my main attention to climate change.
I think what did it for me, what made me start to commit to keeping the world alive was probably just my realization that if I don't continue to care, then no one will continue to care. I had this pretty serious issue with my school life, my attendance, and my grades in general, and it hit me pretty hard at home and in my social life. And I came to become an at-risk student, and I left school at the end of my sophomore year without getting any credit and just without completing anything. And what made me come to realize is that what didn't matter was, my popularity or who claimed to care about me or who thought I was cool. Because at the end of the day, no one went out of their way to ask me what was happening, where I was at, what was going on in my life. And I've always had people that have cared about me, and I'm sure in everyone's lives there's someone that cares about you. But I realized at that point that other people will only do so much to a certain extent to care about you. And so it was just my realization in that moment that I should apply this to every moment, to everything that I care about in my life. If I care about it and I continue to care about it, then I can help people who similarly feel how I feel to care about the things that I care about, and to keep them caring about the things. Because if I leave it to, I don't need to care because there are so many other people who should care, then nothing will get done, because everyone else will get that mentality of, I don't need to do it because there are other people who can. So it was just that moment in my life where I realized that I just constantly need to care about the things that mean something to me, because if I don't, then people won't either.
That's a perfect segue. Now, I'm not sure, Eddie, can you hear me on this mic? Yeah. Okay, great. So that's a perfect segue to talk about media and documentary filmmakers. And so clearly your film shows that you have this deep caring for the issue of the Yellowstone bison and the way they're being managed. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you came to care so deeply about it and then decided to put that into this film?
Yeah, so it's kind of a long process. So I grew up in Florida, lived in Florida. When I moved out to Montana to do this film program, I actually had no idea about the Yellowstone bison management issue. And then as I visited Yellowstone National Park, got to see the bison in their natural habitat, and then started learning about the issue. I was just kind of in a little bit of shock that people in this day and age would still choose to cull bison. So I don't know, I was just very interested in the issue, and I wanted to know everybody's perspective on the issue, not just Buffalo Field Campaign, but I want to see the rancher perspective, because I can sort of feel where they're coming from in terms of their generational history of ranching the American West. They removed bison from the land so they could have a certain type of lifestyle, and now that's starting to be challenged nowadays when they haven't had to deal with it for a long time. So there's just a lot of interesting stories going on, and I just wanted to do my best to learn about each story and figure out the best way to sort of put it into one film.
Is there talk among the people who are in Yellowstone, managing Yellowstone and the bison, about climate change, and are the bison feeling the squeeze yet there from impacts?
I'm not too sure. I'm not brushed up on the knowledge of how climate change affects bison, but since climate change is changing, altitude, habitat, circumstances, that'll affect bison, and it might cause bison to, want to leave the park in months that, the state of Montana would prefer them not to leave the park at. So, it's just figuring out how to accommodate large mammals on the landscape again. I know moose are being affected by climate change, with parasites and ticks and stuff like that are starting to create a huge moose die-off because of the warmer temperatures. something like that might start happening with bison, but I don't know exactly.
What you all have in common, if I could draw a common thread, is that you're all kind of working on projects that go up, bumping up against government policy. So do you all want to talk a little bit about your experience interfacing, hitting that government policy place? No, pass the mic. This includes you guys.
Yeah, I mean, everything that our Children's Trust does interfaces with government. We're very intentional about taking the fight to government, and we actually argue that there's a legal right that exists for a healthy climate and a stable atmosphere, and we have been crafting litigation to make courts buy into that, and started off as kind of like a fringe thing. People didn't really buy into that. Legal scholars didn't really hear us very much, and then over a period of about 5 or 6 years, people started to really get it. And so now we have some of the top lawyers and constitutional scholars in the entire country saying, yeah, actually this is a thing. And I think we're getting really close for a court to accept that and for judges to be brave and to make a declaration like that. And then if we get that kind of precedent, we're gonna be in a good spot. But we have this friction right now where everybody gets the facts, I think at this point, or at least a large number of people understand that we're running into a really scary time. And people are starting to mobilize, and now we just need to break through that ceiling and get a couple of good decisions going, and then I think we're going to be off and running, and we're going to start to reshape this world how we need to.
So I have a quick question. So then how are the people on our panel, the youth of our panel sitting here today and other youth, critical to busting through to that point beyond?
First of all, they're smarter than everybody that came before them, and it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's true. If you would have been at this Planning and Sustainability Commission hearing the other night and watch 4 young people, 13 and 14 years old, walk in and just lay the facts out in front of their elders who are supposed to be making these decisions, clear, plain language, factual orientation, and laying it at the feet of people and saying, look, don't screw my generation. Stop it. Help us have the planet that we want to have. It's so powerful coming from young people. Government can tune out the same activists that come in over and over again that they see all the time. They can put them in categories. They can keep them away from decision making. They know how to handle those people. But when government sees youth coming, to the doorstep and saying, give us what we want, what we need to have a future, they can't ignore that anymore. It's extremely powerful.
I was just going to say that youth are very powerful because, like I said earlier, it's our generation that right now on this earth is going to be living here for the longest right now. And so when the youth goes to the government and says, hey, listen, this needs to change, I feel like it has more of an impact than if somebody who is older came in, because the youth we have longer, it's going to affect us more.
Do we have questions in the audience that anyone wants to ask for our filmmaker, Eddie, or our panelists? Yeah? Yes?
I feel a little dissed by that last one. My first action was 50 years ago at a port terminal in Oakland. I want to ask you all where my next action is, because I don't buy in that just because I'm not a half century older, I'm not coming. So where's my next action?
So, to say that youth have a stronger voice in this right now does not mean that they don't need allies. And actually, I'm 31, so I'm not super old, I don't think, at this point. And most of the people that I interface with in local climate action are much to my senior, and are the people that are making the calls, getting people to hearings, who are actually putting their bodies on the line and pledging resistance, and that's extremely necessary for this to happen. We need to start bridging that generational gap more and more. So I apologize if that came off as a slight. It's certainly not. I'm extremely impressed by my elders and the work that they do. So, but do y'all have any?
The question was, where's my next action?
Yeah, how can they support you?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. First of all, I'd like to apologize sincerely if that did offend anyone of my grandmother's generation. I'm not trying to say that every single person in a single generation is the exact same way, because clearly you see people in my generation that are advocating for things that we care about, and people that just kind of sit by and do whatever. So I'm not saying that it was, that everyone in that generation is that way. I'm just saying that that was the major problem of the generation, and that's what the vast majority of people cared about at the time and do care about. So if that did offend you, I apologize. And probably your next step to take would be to, just continue to educate the youth that are in your life. If you have grandchildren or nieces, nephews, whatever, if you volunteer at a school or anywhere that there are youth or just people who don't really know about this serious issue or just issues that you care about in general, that's a great place to step towards. Is just make sure that people know, because when people know about something, they ask questions about it to learn more about what they don't know. That's a really great first place to take a step towards, just making sure people know.
Can you guys tell us what kind of things you're actually doing, like when you're advocating? Tell us about some of the recent stuff that you've done.
Well, writing letters or papers and sending them to whoever needs to read them or should read them. I know when I was at Sunnyside on Valentine's Day, because it's also Oregon's birthday, we went up to Salem to the governor's office, and we had all wrote Valentines, like against the coal train. And we did that. And last year, when I was part of the climate change cohort at Sunnyside, we went and we testified at the coal train rally down at Pioneer Courthouse Square. And
I was in 6th grade when we went and delivered the Valentines, and I just remember we took pretty much everyone in our school, not everyone went, but everybody at least made one Valentine, and we just had this gigantic heap of pink and red hearts, and we just put them on the governor's secretary's desk, and she just looked so overwhelmed, and it was just this great experience of just a lot of people care about this, and she was really surprised by that, and I thought that was really cool.
So last year I went down to Salem and I testified before the Oregon Transportation Commission to not approve any of the 4 projects they were thinking of approving.
What were the projects about?
I don't remember exactly, but one of them was increasing the speed of the coal trains going through Rainier, Oregon. And I also last year went to an academy in Seattle, and it's called Plan for the Planet, and they teach kids how to prepare presentations and to give kids and tell kids that they have a voice, and they sway people, and they teach you persuasive ways to convince people that climate change is a real issue and that they have to activate.
Yes. Great. There's another hand up.
I'd like to make a comment. Those of us who are familiar with conspiracy and its thrust understand that, just put it in smaller context, first world demand for meat is the biggest problem. And meat consumption, of course, is all generations, and I'm proud as an old duffer that I'm not a meat eater. And we've got to recognize meat eating in the first world, let's put it that way. Because we know a lot of sustaining, in Africa and other places, Eskimos and whatever, giving up meat might be a problem. But first world demand for meat, we can give up meat growing. And that's where the biggest problem is for sustainability of the world.
Thank you for that thought. So what's next for you guys? What's the next?
Actually, we had a...
Oh, sorry. Yes?
I just want to say, well, thank you to the Buffalo Field, Silence in the Thunder film, because it's amazing, and I know some of the guys who work for Buffalo Field campaign, and I'm just really glad that word is getting out there more, because it's a very important issue. And I'm blown away by how sincere and articulate you guys are. I teach at Cleveland High School, and it's just so wonderful to hear young people with this
Right, I mean, if you know, and everybody here, if you know young people that are, you know, in your community that are interested in these issues and kind of feel disempowered and don't know exactly how to apply this, there's people like this, that, I mean, there's a whole entire school at Sunnyside that does this education. I think as a teacher, you know, getting this stuff into the curriculum is extremely important, because once people learn about climate issues, the next question is, what do we do about it? And then there are avenues that are available. So our Children's Trust or Plant for the Planet, for example, are good examples that we, you know, let kids know how these complicated bureaucratic processes work, more or less. The stuff that 15, 16, 14-year-olds shouldn't have to learn, but we can teach sort of like, how do you find these processes? Who do you go talk to? Who are the people that are making these decisions? We have a regional training on May 16th in Portland, where we're trying to bring in both youth and adults to kind of like give them that, groundwork to work with. And then really immediately is on April 30th, there's a hearing for this propane export terminal where we need to mob City Hall. And so if you can bring classes on field trips, if you can have that to be like a special thing that you talk about within the school, that will be a great way, because there will be a lot of youth there. That'll be a great way to like show them that there are other youth that are working on these projects as well.
I also wanted to say that maybe some of the students that testified would be willing to come to Cleveland and talk to students there. So I am going to see them this week and ask them and just try to make connections with as many teachers as I can, so to bring them in to talk.
If people want to reach you and email the two of you to get some balls rolling in their neighborhoods or their schools, how do they actually get in touch with you guys?
My email address is very simple. It's just nick@ourchildrenstrust.org. No apostrophe, because the email thing. And then I have cards sitting outside as well, and I'll be lingering around, and you can chat with me if you like.
My email is ses_janz@yahoo. So we're really trying to get the word out, to get a lot of students at this hearing. And for sure, the May 16th conference.
Yeah, and I mean, I go to Cleveland now, so yeah.
Yay, a match.
I could also come and talk, and I also feel like just spreading the word, talking to your friends, talking to everybody, and really informing them on this issue and giving them the facts. Because I feel like a lot of people know about climate change and know that it is an issue here, but they don't realize how immediate of an issue and how serious. And I also feel like a lot of people think of it as global warming, and I prefer to use the term climate change, because climate change, global warming is just like, oh, the planet's warming, and climate change is like natural disasters and everything else that is because of carbon emissions and all these other things.
Yeah, when educating youth, like if you just spout facts at them, I know like a lot of my friends, like if we're just sitting there and we're listening to a presentation and they're just like spouting facts about how the world's gonna end because everything's heating and storms and everything, we're just kind of like, oh, that sucks, and we just sit there and listen. But if you come up with like a cool way to present those facts or show them like in real life affecting people like our age, if you show them that it's like a real thing, not just a statistic, that really helps.
Maybe we'll draft Eddie to come out and make a film about you guys going to the I don't know if you could... Pardon?
No, I was saying it would be an interesting film.
I don't know if you could hear you got quite a compliment from somebody in the audience who was off mic, and they were connected to the Buffalo Field campaign, so I want to make sure that you heard that comment there, thanking you for your film. Does anybody have one more question or something to say?
Excuse me, what's your name? What Carolyn said. I'm a former student at Cleveland HS, and you know, I do what my colleagues do. I just, you know, talk to people my age about the issue, and I just try and boil it down into a way that I could explain it to first and second graders, because, you know, if you can't teach it at a basic level, then you should probably figure out a way to teach it at a basic level or not teach it, because if it's too complicated, then people lose interest pretty quick. So what I'd have to say is, if there isn't one, then you should start some form of like environmentalism education club at Cleveland, or just, you know, talk to other teachers to have them bring it up in the daily bulletin or whatever you guys call it. Just, you know, get people talking, ask a question at the beginning of every class, like, how do you feel about this? Just get it started talking in the school, and have people come to you so they can they can use you as like an advocate to start helping with this issue.
The gentleman who's organizing in Washington wants to add something.
I do educate on climate around the region, and I agree with everything you guys are saying is absolutely true. And the piece that's missing psychologically for most kids is what can I do about it? I've actually had people interrupt my presentations to say, why aren't the grown-ups doing anything? And so I turned that on its head, and I built into my presentation what children around the world are doing about it right now. And that's where Plan for the Planet plugs people in, and where our Children's Trust plugs people in. So that training on the 16th, we're going to be there. There's an academy in Seattle on the 9th. On Mother's Day weekend, there's going to be a massive action against the Arctic drilling rigs coming into Seattle. Honor your mother, come to Seattle, and risk arrest, or whatever you need to do to have fun on Mother's Day weekend in Seattle.
Yeah. People can connect with that issue tonight too. We are going to have be showing Eddie's film again, and a film called How to Change the World, which is about the founders of Greenpeace. And Greenpeace is going to be tabling tonight at 7 o'clock at that film. And it was the Greenpeace activists last week who climbed that very shallow Arctic oil rig. So Greenpeace is very, very on task with what's happening in Seattle up to the Arctic, and the connection of moving the ships and giving the ships a place to dock, and all that connection between the Arctic and Seattle right now. So come on out to the 7 o'clock show if you're interested in that. But I'd like to close us out with a couple comments from our youth. So what else do we need to know? Tell us.
Do we have time for one more question? Because I know that this
Yes.
man right here.
Oh, sorry.
But first, I sincerely apologize. We'll get to you as soon as possible. But just to touch back based on what this fine gentleman said, and what I said, maybe don't just talk to people about this issue. Talk to them about it, but also just make a small point, include in why it's important. If that, this is, as a subject, it comes up when you're speaking about it, but just, it never hurts to reiterate the reason why it's important to talk about climate change or just the issue itself, because that was something that never clicked for me while I was a student at Sunnyside. Like, we were always learning about environmental stuff, and I never cared about it because I never understood why. No one ever told me just flat out why we're doing this. It was just, we're always learning about it, and I was always wondering why, but I never had the guts to ask anyone, like, why? Why does it matter? And I just think that sometimes people just need to lay it flat out right there why it's important that things happen, or why they're happening. Now, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to add that one of the things that we are doing is trying to bring Plan for the Planet in various locations in the Portland area. So if anyone is interested in having a child in it or helping to set up those programs, please see Isaac or me after.
And I also just wanted to add, when you're talking to people about climate change and activism, I really feel like you need to know your audience, because certain people, if you just tell them the facts, all these bad, horrible things are happening, they could get scared and try to just put up a shield and not want to think about it. And so I also feel like you have to know your audience and feel like if they're going to get scared by that, you have to start telling them about all these things that people are doing to get them to realize, oh, we can change this. Something I do will make a difference. And then if people are more motivated by nobody's doing anything, something really has to be done, and just telling them more about the facts and everything.
What you said about what youth could do, you can write letters and you can talk to your government and you can do marches, but if you can find really cool, simple ways to get the word out. We did this thing where I think it was Greenpeace, and we all got shirts, and we all went out on. It was K through 8, and all of us got out, and we were on the playground asphalt place, and for a minute or a couple minutes straight, we just banged pots and pans together to get the sound out about climate change. And there's a couple of different medias there, and it was just really about not telling people, but just getting the word out without just telling them facts.
Right now I have a petition that I was going to send it to the city of Beaverton to make them divest from fossil fuels, and I would like you to sign it afterwards.
Can you be out at the table when folks are walking out
Yeah.
by Nick at the table so people can sign it? That'd be great.
I'll say a little bit more. A couple more comments I'd like to make is probably just, you can tell people as much as you'd like about how important something is to you and just to life in the world in general. But more times than not, people, not always, but what I've come to discover is that people aren't willing to listen unless you give them an alternative. Like, let's say with soda, you can tell people that soda is absolutely terrible for you. It has all these artificial chemicals and stuff, but people are like, oh, I like it, I'm gonna drink it anyway. You can always give them an alternative. I'll tell them that unsweetened tea is less calories, and it's also at times caffeinated if you seek out the right types, and just show them health benefits of tea as an alternative to soda. So just give people like something else that they could use in place of whatever they're already using. Because if you leave it up to them alone, then they'll just kind of be like, okay, whatever. I know some facts, but that doesn't do anything for me.
Thank you.
No, that's it.
Thank you all for your wise words and thoughts. We really appreciate you coming here today and participating. And thank you, Eddie, for your beautiful film and sharing it with us. Congratulations on your work.
That's a wrap.